Yo, what is up, my YouTube family? It's boy Arrahaffv, the only the 7 king, whatever you want to call me. And today, welcome back to Stats and Facts Versus, where in today's episode, we'll be doing Ichigo versus Aizen. Now, not the Ichigo versus Aizen that you're thinking of. See, in the comment section of my last video, I had a request from a viewer, this viewer, that wanted to see a specific fight, and that is current Ichigo versus current Aizen. Basically, their strongest 1,000-year blood war versions against each other. Now, I think this is a very interesting concept, because both of these characters have had significant power-ups since their battle. Ichigo especially having significant power-ups since losing his powers against his fight with Aizen. But Aizen, I feel like, is a very overlooked character as far as power-ups in the 1,000-year Blood War arc. And that is because most characters get power-ups like whole entire Bankais or new abilities, but Aizen just gets stronger, blatantly, which is why it's so easy to overlook his power-up in the arc. But he does have a significant one, which is why I do want to go over it in this video. So without further ado, let's hop on in. Also, for future reference, if you guys want your comments to be featured in this video, or if you have a specific video idea that you want me to do, make sure to let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll be down to do it 100%. And also, for the people who already have made suggestions, I will get around to those videos. You just gotta understand I have to make these videos one at a time, because they do take quite a while to make, so I'm gonna get to all of the suggestions just at a certain pace, starting with the very first one I got. So again, I appreciate you guys, and if you want your comments to be featured in the video, or if you want a video based upon your comment, please just go ahead and comment in the comment section down below what you would like to see me do in the future, or just if you enjoyed the video or not. And without further ado, let's get on into the scaling. Now, I did scale Ichigo pretty well in my Ichigo versus Uryu video, so if you want more detailed scaling of Ichigo, just go to that video and see everything I said there. But I won't be going over it too much in this video just because, like I said, I've already done it, and also it wasn't even that long ago, so again, if you just want more detailed scaling of Ichigo, go over to that video. But basically, he's already beyond planetary level, and he's FTL at this point in the series, which is very self-explanatory. So in this video, we'll be going more over Aizen's power-ups and how they match up against Ichigo's. Now, in the start of Aizen's release, we see Shunsui releasing Aizen from prison, but they don't actually fully release Aizen. You see, Shunsui makes the rule that they're only going to release Aizen's mouth, left eye, and ankles. But surprisingly enough, all they had to do was unseal his mouth, and Aizen was able to easily walk out of the seal. Now, this could mean a plethora of other things. This could mean that Aizen was just so powerful that all they needed to do was remove one seal and he was able to break through the whole seal. Or this could mean that Aizen could have broke out the whole time and has just been letting himself be sealed. Either way, he's very powerful at this point in the series, and just by removing one seal, he was freed from the sealing spell. Not to mention, a very, very important scene happens in this panel. We can see one of the Soul Reapers that guard Aizen reaching towards Aizen, in which both of their hands and fingers just completely burn off due to Aizen's Suigetsu. Now, this is very important because it shows that Aizen's power and spiritual pressure has grown exponentially. You see, this isn't even the first time we see this from Aizen. When Aizen has his first evolution with the Hyogoku, we can see him easily and even accidentally vaporizing an entire human being just by existing, really. Now, obviously, we can estimate that this Soul Reaper has more power than just a regular human, and even this Soul Reaper was still almost killed just by Aizen's Suigetsu itself. Now, mind you, this is just a random no-name Soul Reaper, but this is still a pretty impressive feat. Plus, we also learn in this arc that Aizen's black suit actually does have an impact on his power. You see, what the black suit does is it doesn't completely seal his power, but it keeps his Suigetsu basically around him at all times. So instead of his Suigetsu just going everywhere and affecting innocent people as it did before with the Hyogoku, it's all contained into Aizen. Hence why the Soul Reaper's body only burned when he reached towards Aizen, because he entered kind of Aizen's domain of his spiritual pressure, which is actually kind of crazy. When you think about it, Aizen just basically had a version of infinity before infinity. With his Suigetsu just being so powerful that if you're not at a certain power level, it'll just straight up vaporize you just by getting close to it. So it's actually a really good thing that they had this black suit seal him, because I actually don't know how they would have released him in the first place if they didn't. Anybody walking close to the seal would basically just be evaporated immediately, if not for his suit holding back his Suigetsu. Now the question is this actually an amp for Aizen? And particularly, I don't think it necessarily is. See, I guess you could say because the power is more condensed and close to his body, he could use more of it. But again, I don't see this being the case, and I honestly think it's a pretty far stretch. But we do actually see a showcase of Aizen's power and how it's grown since then when he first steps out of the prison. You see, after the Soul King's power erupts and overflows, it turns into these kind of mini monsters that all fall down to the Soul Society and the Soul Reapers there. And this is kind of Aizen's first showcase of power since he's been released, and where he uses Hado number 90, his Black Coffin technique, and immediately one-shots a plethora of all of said monsters. Now again, this isn't the craziest feat ever, but it still is pretty significant and a pretty good show of just how powerful he's gotten just by sitting in a chair really, which is kind of insane. I also do want to mention we do see a scene with Mayuri and Aizen where Mayuri actually wants to go head up with Aizen to see which is more powerful, Aizen's pure Ryetsu or Mayuri's science. And I just want to throw out there that I think this would have been a very interesting and actually very cool fight. Now obviously it didn't happen for obvious reasons, but I still think it would have been cool to see. And who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to see it in the future, and I actually kind of hope so. Now one thing we do learn about Aizen after this time skip in the 1000-Year Blood War arc is that he has fully fused with his Kyoko Suigetsu, meaning the previous activation of Kanzan Simon is actually not the same. See, previously somebody had to look at the sword, but now he is one with the sword. So I guess you could say all the person has to do really now is just look at him, which as you can imagine in battle is very easy to accomplish, because I highly doubt you're defeating Aizen without looking at him. In fact, for most characters, I highly doubt you're defeating Aizen while looking at him. Now in the fight with Yhwach, we do see Aizen's sword return. We see him use it in the fight against him, but does it actually return, and is he actually using it? You see, the only time we actually see the sword is when Yhwach is under Aizen's illusion. But whenever we actually see the real Aizen, he's not wielding the blade. So it could just be his illusions using the sword to throw off his opponent, which I actually think is the most likely. I doubt they'd have the whole section of him mentioning that he's fused with the blade just for him to still have to use it. So I'm pretty sure it's just his illusions using the blade, and he doesn't actually need it anymore or even have it. Now we do see Aizen's Suigetsu actually work fairly well against Yhwach, even confusing the king himself, which just goes to show how immensely overpowered Aizen really is. I mean, he's still going head up with Yhwach, like the literal king of the Quincy, which is a fairly impressive feat. And the fact that his illusions still work on somebody at that level of power just goes to show that it doesn't matter how powerful you really are, you can still fall for Aizen's illusions. Now we do see in the fight with Yhwach that Aizen does actually release his Suigetsu when Yhwach lands a blow on him. Now this is actually a very important scene within the manga, because now we have to differentiate, did he let it go because he wanted to, or did he actually just run out of power? Now we actually seen Yhwach mention this himself, and Yhwach specifically states that it could be only one of the two things. Now me personally, I do think it's just Kubo's way of writing. I mean, really think about it. If you think about all the other times that Aizen has used Suigetsu in the series, he always releases it when either he lands a blow on the opponent or the opponent lands a blow on him. But I doubt this is actually a condition of the move itself. I just think this is a way of Kubo's writing. So I guess you could technically attribute this to Aizen's cockiness. But I guess it's actually not too far-fetched to say that he just ran out of energy fighting the literal king of Quincy. So if you want to go that route, you definitely could, and say that Aizen actually just ran out of power using such strong illusions against Yhwach, or that he had to use more power to make illusions strong enough to fool the king of Quincy's. Not to mention, beyond Aizen's raw power and his Kyoko Suigetsu, he also is a master of Kido. Now I don't think this will help him too much in this particular fight, but it still is fairly worth going over. The main two Kido need to be going over is number 90 and number 99. Or I guess I should say Hado. Number 90 being Kuro Hitsuigi, the Black Coffin, and number 99 being Goryu Tenmetsu. Now I do really want to quickly touch on number 90 for a little while. You see, number 90 with no incantation is still a very strong Hado, even being able to take out captain level enemies. And what this Hado does specifically is it spawns a black coffin around the enemy, and then stabs them with multiple hundreds, maybe thousands of black spears that pierce the skin. Now this is fairly powerful by itself, but the part of this that we really need to discuss is the incantation. You see, when Aizen actually says the incantation for Hado number 90, he summons the black coffin on Ichigo, and he states himself that this version of the technique actually uses gravity that even distorts time and space. Now, obviously, we don't actually see the technique work because Ichigo just easily breezes by it, as at this point in the series, he's one of the most powerful characters in Bleach, period. But I do think this is actually worth taking in. Now, I don't actually think this is too far-fetched to say, as we have seen other things in the series be kind of time distorting or space distorting before. And Aizen is not really the type to over exaggerate. I mean, sure, he's a trickster and a liar, and his main ability is making illusions, but he's never been one to over exaggerate his own power. So I do think if the statement is being said directly by Aizen himself, the master of Hado and Kido, that it actually could be true. Now, whether you actually believe this or not is up to you, but I don't think it'll be particularly useful in this scaling regardless. Now we get to the forbidden Hado, Hado number 99, where Aizen gathers a bunch of Ryetsu in the area, and it kind of almost resembles fire. And then he turns this Ryetsu into dragons that attack and blitz anything in their way. Now again, we don't see much from this Hado itself, but just due to the fact of it being forbidden, and Aizen himself saying that it's his ultimate trump card Kido, or Hado rather, I think it's safe to say it's fairly powerful, and is at least, if not more powerful than his Hado 90. Not to mention the fact that Aizen does still have the Hyogoku in his system. You see, all they really did was take out the benefits that it would give him. So basically all his transformations over the course of the entire Fate Karakura Town arc. But it still is within him and connected to him, which means Aizen at this point in the series is still effectively immortal, which is actually fairly important to this fight, as you would imagine. You see, here's the thing, when it comes to destructive power itself, Ichigo absolutely trumps Aizen, as Aizen's forte isn't necessarily just overwhelming power. Now I do want to stress that in the last video that we did, discussing Ichigo's abilities, we used a lot of Ukiyo-e scaling. Now we can confirm that everything that we scaled in that video, Aizen is above, even probably the Vastalorde itself. And due to his final form being a transformation, usually how Bleach transformations work is they are a 10 times boost, which would most likely narratively imply that Aizen's final form against Ichigo is probably at least 10 times stronger than the Vastalorde, which is already planetary level. So at this point, Aizen is putting up planetary level stats, and his Ryatsu only gets stronger as the series continues, especially up to this point in the 1000-year Blood War. So I do think Aizen at this point in the series is planetary level, just not as blatantly planetary level as something like a true Shikai Ichigo. Now you see, Ichigo is a very straightforward character. He's basically just power. When you really think about it, his main and only way to defeat any of his enemies is overwhelming them with speed and strength, which, as we've previously went over, he can most likely definitely do. But I bring this up to say he doesn't really have much technique. And what I mean by this is characters like Byakuya, Aizen, and even Uryu have things like Hado, Kido, and Quincy spells to their disposal, making them very versatile. Whereas Ichigo is a lot more just fee fi fo fum. He just has two powerful blades and he's gonna swing them at you until you die. Essentially, that's his whole character. Now the reason I bring this up is that I do think Ichigo's power could slightly overwhelm Aizen's. But the issue here is that Aizen is still immortal, which means no matter how much Ichigo's power overpowers Aizen's, he still can't necessarily kill him. Now it was stated by Kubo in a Club Outside interview that Ichigo's Bankai did bypass the Almighty, but there's nothing out there to narratively imply that it would do the same to the Hyogoku. So realistically speaking, Ichigo doesn't really have a way of killing Aizen. I mean, yes, he could probably overpower Aizen with just pure strength, but pure strength wouldn't be enough to clap Aizen, meaning he would need something more. And that's just the issue. He doesn't really have much more. I mean, Ichigo has his Getsuga Tenchos and he has his Seros, but he doesn't actually have anything like a sealing technique or any type of Hado or Kido. Now, I guess you could technically argue that since Ichigo is planetary level, that he could just aim one of his blasts at, I don't know, the planet and just blow the entire thing up, but I think this is kind of a lazy way to scale, and also just not very likely straight up. But if you do want to use this style of scaling, then technically yes, he could do that and most likely win. But the main issue here is that besides that, Ichigo has no solid way to kill Aizen, and that's not even the only main issue he has to deal with. He has another main issue, and it is, as you can imagine, Kanzan Simon, or just Kyoka Suigetsu. You see, Ichigo was just so overwhelmingly powerful in his final fight with Aizen that it probably just wouldn't even worked on him, or just didn't work on him. But at this point in the series, I say Ichigo and Aizen's Ryatsu are somewhere around the same. And due to it even working on somebody like the King of Quincy himself, I think it's safe to say that it would work on Ichigo as well. And with this being said, Ichigo has no real way to counter Kyoko's Suigetsu. Now I guess you could say it works somewhat like a Genjutsu, and I know you're wondering, well, why is that important? Well, because it is stated in Naruto that a Genjutsu can be broken by another soul within the body. And if Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu works something like this, Ichigo has multiple souls within his body to snap him out of the illusion. Now, it hasn't worked like this in the past, so I doubt this would actually work, but if you just did want to give Ichigo the benefit of the doubt, there it is. I guess you could say that Zangetsu could just break him out of it. But again, this isn't very likely. And one thing I kind of forgot to mention in the last video is Ichigo's immense healing ability that he has from his hollow side, even being able to survive getting his whole entire chest blown out. So he could probably come back from death just like Aizen could, but not to the actual brink of immortality. But the reason this doesn't really factor much into this fight is even though Ichigo probably does trump Aizen in both speed and power and durability and defense and probably many other stats, he just has no way to actually put Aizen down for good. You see, Aizen trumps Ichigo in a very important stat, and that is technique and ability, with his ability being absolutely broken, and him technically having multiple of them. You see, Ichigo just has his main base ability, that's power. If the power doesn't work initially, he just gets more powerful, or throws a more powerful blast, or Getsu Gatensho, or Beam Rosero, or whatever you want to say. He swings. If the swing doesn't cut, he swings harder. If the swing doesn't harm, he swings harder. That's Ichigo's entire character. He just keeps swinging until the enemy dies. But when the enemy is literally immortal, what is he to do? I mean, again, I guess you could go with the Bankai theory, but besides that, he has no actual solid way to just straight up kill Aizen. Nor does he really have a solid way of breaking out of Kyoko Suigetsu. You see, Ichigo might have Aizen in a lot of stats, but Aizen has Ichigo in one of the most important ones. Aizen's pure skill, technique, ability matched with his intelligence is just too much to overcome. I mean, Ichigo has so much more to worry about than just a few Seros. He has Kanzan Simon, the immortality, and multiple Hado to have to play around. I'm not saying that Ichigo just blatantly loses this fight, but I'm saying I think in the fairest way possible, Aizen just has more win cons than Ichigo. Now, although I do think it'll be immensely difficult for Aizen to defeat Ichigo, just because Ichigo is so resilient, he has so much durability, and he has a really good healing factor, I think it's a lot easier for Aizen to kill Ichigo than it is for Ichigo to kill Aizen, very obviously. I mean, even if Aizen has to take his time to find out a way to kill Ichigo, he has that time to waste, because he is immortal. Whereas Ichigo doesn't have that time. I mean, once Ichigo runs out of energy, which we haven't really seen him do many times in the series, and isn't really a very solid argument to go off of, but against an immortal enemy, it probably will happen more times than none. What is he to do? I mean, even if Aizen were to completely run out of energy, he is just baseline immortal. It doesn't matter how much energy he has. His immortality is a completely separate thing on its own. Now, with this in mind, I know this might surprise a lot of people, but I think more times than none, I actually give this fight to Aizen. I mean, from Kanzan Simon to his immortality, to his technique with Hado and Kido, to his just pure intelligence, I think he has more than enough to just overpower blatant power. Now, obviously, I do think there are win cons for Ichigo, but I think Aizen just has many more of them. So, keeping this video as short as possible, because I don't want it to end up being too long, I think according to the stats and according to the facts, Aizen actually takes this battle. I mean, at this point in the series, Aizen is far beyond light speed, far beyond planetary, and even if Ichigo's stats are higher than Aizen's, or maybe even significantly higher, again, his technique is just too much. I would argue that Ichigo at this point in the series is just blatantly more powerful than Aizen, and probably even faster, but even so, that's not enough to defeat Aizen. In fact, the only way that Aizen has been defeated in the series so far is purely by sealing. He literally cannot be killed. The only way you can defeat him is by sealing. And we know that Ichigo doesn't really have anything in his arsenal that can do that, as he doesn't really have an arsenal at all. His arsenal is basically just a bunch of AK-47s. He just shoots and shoots and shoots until eventually the opponent dies. And if they can't die, well then he's kinda cooked. Now, I can already see the comments now of people think I'm being biased on the side of Aizen, but I can assure you I'm not. Especially with the comment section of my last video saying that I was biased to Ichigo, I doubt I can be biased to Ichigo and Aizen at the same time. Also, everything I'm saying here is just proven facts. I mean, Ichigo doesn't really have any way around immortality, nor does he really have any way around Kyoka Suigetsu. I think just straight up due to technique on its own, the stats and the facts show that Aizen takes this battle, and your victor is Sosuke Aizen. Aizen at this point in the series has reached an entirely another level of power that any Soul Reaper could really hope of achieving. He is quite literally just built different. He is the ultimate villain. The villain that to this day still cannot be killed. To the point where there are actually genuine arguments out there of Aizen versus Squad Zero. And some of those arguments actually put Aizen as the victor. And even though I'm not going to touch on that today because that's probably going to be its own video down the road, the fact that that's even a possibility kind of speaks for itself. Again, Ichigo in no way is weak, and at this point in the series is one of the strongest characters in the series, and you actually could argue is stronger than Aizen. The fact is, he just cannot kill Aizen, and that's the problem. Aizen will eventually outsmart and outmaneuver Ichigo. With a collection of Kanzan, Saimon, Kyoka, Suigetsu, and his immortality, it's just bound to happen. So with that being said, according to the stats and according to the facts, Aizen takes this battle, and your victor is Sosuke Aizen. I really hope you guys appreciated this video. If you did, as always, feel free to hit that thumbs up button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and comment down below how you personally feel, if you feel different, if there's anything I forgot to touch on or that I missed out on, and let me know anything you would like to see me power scale in the future, because I am definitely down to do it. I already have a fairly long list, but I'm not opposed to putting more things on said list. And also, again, if you want your comment to be featured in the video, just go ahead and drop any type of comment in the comment section down below. Whether it was what you thought on the video, your personal opinion, or just a fight you want to see in the future. So with that being said, I have been your host that does the most from coast to coast, Arrahaffv, son of Arrahaffv, and it's me, y'all. Peace and out. Peace!